Have you ever felt exhausted, even when the day has only just begun? Imagine your life as if it were on an invisible treadmill. You run frantically, your heart racing under the weight of pressure. Yet, as time passes, you suddenly realize you are still standing in the exact same place. This is the tragedy of our age of excess. We are overfed with information, flooded with entertainment, yet starving for meaning. Most people believe that if they stop, they will lose. But in truth, it is the fear of missing out that is stealing what matters most: your own presence with yourself. In this frantic attempt to maintain control, we unknowingly fall into the psychic trap that Jung once warned us about. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. The more you tense yourself against the chaos outside, the more you abandon your inner world to ruin. This exhaustion does not come from a body that lacks rest, but from a soul that has lost its connection. It is time to redefine what victory means. The productivity of the elite 1% does not come from doing more, but from the capacity to return fully to oneself. Below are 7 principles grounded in Jungian wisdom to help you release invisible burdens and truly focus on the self. Remember this: when the inner world regains its order, the outer flow of life will naturally begin to open again. Rule number 1: listening to stillness. Begin this journey of restructuring the psyche at the most vulnerable moment of your day, the instant you open your eyes in the morning. Be honest with yourself. What is your very first reflex when consciousness slowly returns after sleep? Is it your hand, almost as if guided by unconscious programming, reaching for the phone on your bedside table? And the moment the screen lights up, that cold blue glow floods your retina, carrying with it a barrage of notifications, an unresolved work email, news of an economic crisis unfolding somewhere in the world, or the polished, glamorous life of an old acquaintance on Instagram. In just a few brief seconds, you have already lost yourself. We often justify this by telling ourselves that we need to stay informed, that we need to stay connected, that we need to be productive. But through the lens of depth psychology, the truth is far more bare and painful. We are afraid of silence. For the modern human being, silence feels like an abyss of uncertainty. Driven by fear, we choose to numb the mind with cheap dopamine. We fling the doors wide open and allow the outside world to rush into our bedroom, filling the mind with other people's noise, simply so we do not have to hear the voice of our own inner life. Yet Jung, with his timeless wisdom, once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Imagine your mind in the morning as a glass of water drawn from a mountain spring. After a night of rest, most of the sediment has settled. The water is clear, fresh, and alive. But if your first action is to consume news and social media, it is as if you plunge your hand into that glass and stir it violently. You cloud your clarity with the mud of chaotic emotions imported from the outside world. Stillness, by contrast, is the time for things to settle. It functions as a great filter of the soul. It helps you discern what is truly your desire, what arises from the soul itself, and what is the pressure of society imposed from the outside. So what do those who genuinely take ownership of their destiny do differently? They practice what is called the sacred morning. It is a spiritual commitment to devote the first hour of the day to connecting with oneself rather than consuming. Try applying this as early as tomorrow morning. First, after turning off the alarm, place your phone face down. No social media, no email, no news. Next, take a few slow, deep breaths and bring your attention to the sensations in your body. Simply be present with the moment as it is. After you get out of bed, choose one of these 2 small practices. Even 5 minutes is enough. Journaling. Take a pen and paper and write down whatever thoughts are moving through your mind. No editing, no correcting. Just let them spill onto the page so the weight can ease. Mindful coffee or tea. Prepare a cup of coffee or tea, then sit quietly. Gaze out the window. Notice the scenery. Feel the warmth in your hands. Take in the aroma, the taste, the gentle heat. Begin with just 5 to 10 minutes each morning. What matters most is that you recognize this as a private inner space, a place where you consciously plant an intention for the day ahead. Today, what truly matters most to me? Here lies a great paradox. To move faster, you must begin by stopping completely. Do not turn your mind into a public landfill where anyone can dump their information. Turn it into a sacred garden, where only what is pure and meaningful is allowed to take root. When you learn to master the stillness of the morning, a quiet transformation unfolds. You step into the day, not with the frantic urgency of someone afraid of being left behind, but with the calm authority of a king entering his own kingdom. You are no longer chasing time. You are moving in harmony with it. And that is the true beginning of victory. Rule number 2, facing the truth. When the stillness of the morning has completed its task of cleansing the mind, allowing the inner lake to become calm and smooth, that is also the moment we must prepare ourselves for a more difficult next step, looking deeply into the bottom of that lake. If Rule 1 helps us separate from the noise of the outside world, then Rule 2 demands that we confront the chaos within. After stepping out of the sacred morning, people often immediately put on a familiar suit of armor called busyness. In modern society, busyness is celebrated as a badge of honor. We look at those who are constantly occupied, whose schedules are packed from morning to night, and instinctively assume they represent the image of success. Yet through the lens of psychoanalysis, excessive busyness is often not a sign of efficiency at all, but a sophisticated defense mechanism of the psyche. The most primal instinct of the human being is to flee from pain, and ironically, the tasks that truly matter, the ones capable of changing a life, building a career, or elevating the self, are always accompanied by pain. It is the pain of uncertainty, the fear of failure, the discomfort of having to exhaust one's thinking, or the feeling of smallness when standing before a great challenge. To avoid this legitimate pain, the unconscious mind immediately sets a sweet trap. It urges us to do easier things that offer instant gratification. Replying to a non-urgent email, joining a meaningless meeting, reorganizing files on a computer, or scrolling through news sites under the guise of market research. We call this work, but in truth, it is procrastination in disguise. We use artificial busyness to deceive our conscience into believing we are making an effort, while in reality, we are running away from our own potential. Carl Jung once offered a profound observation about this phenomenon. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. At first glance, this sentence may sound harsh, yet within it lies a key to liberation. Jung was reminding us that no one can heal a wound by pretending it does not hurt. The brutal truth is that the more we avoid pain, the more it persists, transforming into other forms of suffering, regret, the sensation of being stuck, and the emptiness of a life that has never been fully realized. Pain, in this context, is not the enemy. It is the teacher. The resistance we feel toward a difficult task is itself a compass. Where fear and resistance are strongest, that is often where the greatest treasure of growth is hidden. So how do we remove this mask of busyness and begin to live in alignment with our true capacity for effectiveness? To make this easier to see, imagine that your task list from the past week is a crime scene. It holds silent evidence that does not lie about how you have spent your life force. Sort through each block of time that has passed. Which hours created real value, moments of deep work, when you truly faced a challenge and produced something meaningful? and which stretches of time were merely painkillers, moments spent mindlessly browsing the web, engaging in endlessly polite conversations, or filling the gaps with trivial tasks. After you recognize them, do not deny or despise yourself for the time that was wasted. Instead, seek to understand its motive. Ask yourself gently, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of not being good enough? Afraid of being judged? At this point, productivity is no longer about forcing yourself to run faster on the treadmill. Productivity becomes the courageous act of stepping off the machine, accepting the pain of walking on uneven ground, knowing that each step is still a step forward. Facing the truth in your schedule is a way of honoring the finite nature of human time. It is a declaration that you will not trade the most luminous years of your life for a false sense of comfort. You choose the pain of being shaped and refined in exchange for the jewel of wholeness. And this, precisely, is the core quality of those who are not only successful, but truly free. Rule number 3, the power of simplicity. Once we have dared to face the truth within our work schedules and accepted the necessary pains of growth, we often encounter a subtler obstacle, one that quietly drains our vitality without our noticing: complexity. Imagine a mountain climber. He has strong willpower, he has a clear map, yet he moves painfully slowly and grows exhausted with every step. Why? Because on his back is an enormous backpack filled with stones. One stone is called, "What should I eat for lunch today?" Another is, "What color should I wear?" Another is, "How should I word this message politely?" And another is, "What do other people think of me?" We are living our lives exactly like that climber. We carry an invisible backpack, heavy with countless trivial decisions. In modern society, we are taught that more is better. More choices are said to mean more freedom. But in reality, this excess of choice creates a psychological state that Carl Jung warned could be dangerous for the development of the ego: the dispersion of libido. In Jung's system of thought, libido is not merely sexual energy, as Freud conceived it. For Jung, libido is psychic energy. It is the vital sap, the raw fuel that powers all acts of will, creativity, and emotion. The most important thing to engrave into memory is this: this energy is finite. Each morning when you wake up, the universe grants you a certain amount of libido. Every time you make a decision, even the smallest one, such as choosing black coffee or coffee with milk, you pay a transaction fee in psychic energy. Complexity, therefore, is the silent enemy of greatness. When our lives are surrounded by too many possessions, too many social obligations, too many consumer choices, the flow of libido is fragmented into thousands of small, depleted streams, instead of gathering into a single powerful waterfall capable of driving the turbine of meaningful goals. The exhaustion that modern Americans often complain about, the feeling of, "I haven't done anything physically demanding, so why am I so tired?" is precisely the result of this energy leakage. We are not tired from working hard. We are tired from having to choose. Carl Jung believed that complexity is often a veil covering inner chaos. By contrast, simplicity is the highest expression of wisdom and inner order. For the self to emerge and radiate, it requires open space, unobstructed by the clutter of material life. The solution to this problem is design your defaults. It is the art of automating the trivial so that intelligence and vitality can be liberated for what is extraordinary. Observe great minds. Why did Steve Jobs always wear a black turtleneck? Why does Mark Zuckerberg wear the same gray t-shirt? Why did Obama limit himself to blue or gray suits? Many people dismiss this as eccentricity or boredom. In truth, it is a psychologically wise calculation. They are removing stones from the backpack. By establishing a default decision for clothing, they save a measurable amount of libido every morning. They do not allow the mind to be entangled in the question, how do I look today? That sharpness is reserved instead for the question, what will I create today? This principle must be applied more broadly, far beyond clothing. It applies to eating, training, and daily living. Instead of standing at a food counter every afternoon, agonizing over 10 menu options, establish a default meal plan for weekdays. Instead of wrestling with your thoughts each evening about whether or not to go to the gym, turn it into a non-negotiable ritual. At 5 o'clock, you put on your shoes. No thinking required. Many people resist this idea. The ego often protests loudly. This is boring. I need spontaneity. I need novelty. But this too is a trap. Spontaneity in trivial matters is, in truth, enslavement to momentary emotion. When you spend energy choosing what to eat, you have less energy left to be spontaneous in art or in meaningful work. When you allow chaos to rule your wardrobe, you lose the inner order required to solve complex problems in your career. Designing your defaults is not about turning a human being into a machine. It is about building a solid runway so that the airplane of the soul can take off. The great battles of life, the home runs, writing a book, building a business, healing a broken relationship, or discovering your life's calling, demand immense and sustained concentration of energy. You cannot win these battles if your mind is still preoccupied with deciding what to watch on Netflix tonight. The act of setting defaults is the act of reclaiming energy. It is a way of honoring the most precious capital that existence has granted you. You refuse to spend it on things that fit the crowd, but mean nothing to the soul. And when you begin to remove these invisible stones from your back, you will feel an almost astonishing lightness. Rule number 4, learning to say no to protect your energy. After removing the heavy stones of complexity from personal life in Rule 3, we begin to feel a current of energy slowly returning. Yet, almost immediately, we are confronted with a more demanding, more painful, and far more courageous challenge: collision with other people's worlds. If simplicity helps us conserve energy from inanimate things, Principle 4 asks us to protect that energy from living, breathing human beings. This is where we learn the art of refusal. We, especially sensitive souls, often become trapped in a toxic psychological script known as people-pleasing. We say yes to every request. We say yes when a boss assigns yet another undefined task. We say yes when friends invite us into empty forms of entertainment. We say yes to family even when we ourselves are in desperate need of rest. Why do we do this? Deep down, it is not pure kindness, as we like to believe. It is fear. Fear of being judged as selfish. Fear of disappointing others. And the deepest fear of the inner child. The fear of being abandoned. In exchange for acceptance by the group, we are willing to cut pieces off ourselves. Every forced yes that leaves our mouth is like pouring a bucket of cold water onto the fragile flame of passion that has just begun to burn within. We sacrifice our integrity for a fleeting sense of false peace. Carl Jung, with his penetrating insight into human relationships, offered a powerful metaphor. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. This statement carries a warning about the permeability of the soul. Jung wanted us to understand that human beings are entities easily influenced and reshaped by the energy of others. When you open yourself to interaction, you accept the risk that your own nature will be altered by the nature of the other, whether you wish it or not. Because this transformation is inevitable and irreversible, the establishment of boundaries becomes a psychological necessity for survival. Do not see boundaries as cold brick walls meant to divide. See them instead as the immune system of the soul. In biology, the immune system recognizes what nourishment is allowed to enter and sustain the cells. and what toxins must be blocked to protect life. Without an immune system, the body would be invaded by its environment, infected, and eventually destroyed. In the same way, you need boundaries to clearly define where other people's emotions end and where my peace begins. This principle brings to mind the case of Emily, a sharp marketing director in New York, who once sat across from me in a therapy session. Her eyes ringed dark with profound exhaustion. Emily was a perfect example of what I call the corporate martyr. She confessed that she was trapped in a toxic relationship with a colleague, another senior manager in the company, who seemed to live in a constant state of crisis. This person would repeatedly call Emily late at night or on weekends to complain about subordinates, panic over deadlines, and play the role of the victim in every situation. At first, Emily was genuinely supportive and willing to listen. Over time, however, she became painfully aware that these interactions were draining her energy dry, and yet, haunted by the pressure to be a team player, she always answered the phone. She feared that if she refused, she would be seen as cold, unpleasant, or selfish. Day after day, this talented woman woke up like a hollow shell, snapping at her husband and children for no clear reason, and losing her creative spark entirely. She had been transformed into a lesser version of herself, simply because her immune system of the soul had been left wide open to toxins. It took many weeks before Emily found the courage to rebuild that protective boundary. The turning point came when she dared to send a simple message. "I'm sorry that you're having a hard time, but I can't discuss work after 8 p.m. If it's urgent, we can address it tomorrow morning." When she did this, not only did her sense of peace return, but so did the respect of others. She had saved herself. One more note: when you need to refuse, do not wrap your no in long apologies or elaborate justifications. Excessive explanation is often a sign of guilt. Instead, say no with the calm sincerity of someone who knows their own worth. You might say gently, "I truly appreciate the invitation, but right now I need to devote all my energy to another priority. I don't want to say yes and then be unable to offer you my full presence." You see, this is not rejection. This is the highest form of respect. You respect the other person's time, and you respect the finite energy of your own life. Saying no, though it seems simple, is the price we must pay to protect the tenderness and radiance of the only yes that truly matters. The yes to the destiny of your own life. Do not let yourself wither away in the satisfaction of others. Live fully in the truth of who you are. Rule number 5, bringing light into the shadow of the soul. When you have courageously pruned away empty social ties and declined commitments that drain your energy, you receive a gift that at first glance feels more like a curse: boredom. Observe the natural human response in those dead pockets of time, waiting for an elevator, sitting in a taxi, or facing an unplanned weekend evening. A restless, itchy sensation begins to crawl beneath the skin, and almost immediately, the hand reaches for the phone like a lifebuoy in open water. We scroll, we watch, we read, we pour anything into the mind: funny videos, sensational news, meaningless debates, just to kill the boredom. But why are we so afraid of emptiness? Why can we not sit with ourselves for even 10 minutes? Look directly at how our brains have been shaped in the digital age. Without realizing it, we have trained our minds to become addicts of stimulation. For decades, we have grown accustomed to every second being filled. Ears listening to music, eyes consuming information, fingers swiping screens. This constant busyness functions like a thick suit of armor, shielding us from the feeling of inner emptiness. When you stop working, stop scrolling, that armor falls away. You feel restless and uncomfortable, like someone going through withdrawal. This is the biological reaction of the brain when it is cut off from its familiar supply of dopamine. But beneath the biology, there is something deeper. the panic of a gatekeeper of the mind who has suddenly been disarmed. Imagine your mind as a house. When you are busy, you live only in the brightly lit living room of consciousness, where the ego maintains order and control. But when boredom arrives, when there is nothing left to do, the lights in the living room go out, and that is when you begin to hear strange sounds coming from the dark basement below. That basement, according to Jung, is the unconscious, and the one who dwells there is the shadow. When the control of consciousness loosens during moments of idleness, the wall separating these two worlds becomes thinner than ever. What you have spent years trying to suppress begins to find its way to the surface. These are not merely passing negative thoughts. They are the disowned parts of your true self, the aspects you rejected in order to fit into society. The anger you swallowed in front of an unreasonable boss, the quiet envy toward a friend's success, the wild desires deemed unacceptable, or the profound fear that your life may ultimately be meaningless. Our fragile ego is terrified when it is forced to face these uninvited guests. It fears being shattered by the truth, and so the reflex to grab the phone is not merely a desire for entertainment. It is an act of panicked escape. We choose the anesthetic called dopamine. We would rather become servants to algorithms than stand face to face with our own darkness. Yet Jung left behind a warning that is also a golden key for anyone who wishes to take ownership of their life. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The shadow, in Jung's psychology, is not a place of ugliness and negativity alone. It is also where primal creativity resides, where sharp intuition lives, and where breakthrough solutions emerge. Solutions that ordinary logical thinking cannot reach. Million-dollar ideas, sudden aha moments, and timeless works of art rarely arrive when we are glued to a screen or straining our minds in a meeting room. They come while we are showering, washing dishes, or wandering aimlessly through a forest. So instead of treating boredom as an enemy, turn it into a strategic ally. Consciously create blank spaces in your day, moments where the mind is allowed to wander. Begin with small but quietly radical acts. Take a walk, not a walk while listening to podcasts, music, or counting steps on a smartwatch. This is a walk of presence. Just your feet touching the ground and your eyes resting on the canopy above. Or when you wash the dishes, simply wash the dishes. Do not try to multitask by watching YouTube at the same time. Feel the water flowing over your hands. Listen to the sound of plates touching. In these moments of doing nothing, discomfort will arise at first. Scattered, restless thoughts will rush in. Do not be afraid. Do not judge them. Observe them the way you would watch clouds drifting across the sky. If you patiently move through this initial wave of unease, a deep stillness will begin to open. And then, from within that darkness, something unexpected appears. A solution to a long-stuck problem suddenly becomes clear. A bold business idea takes root. A profound understanding of yourself rises to the surface. Only when you dare to befriend boredom do you find not only peace, but the wellspring of dormant genius within you. You transform fate into choice, and that is the ultimate turning point in winning the game of life. Rule number 6, ritualizing life. Have you ever suddenly realized that a week, a month, or even an entire year has passed without leaving behind a single deep imprint? Day follows day in an endless loop. Waking up, going to work, eating, seeking entertainment, going to sleep. We run our lives on autopilot. We are physically present everywhere, yet the soul seems strangely absent. This drifting through life unconsciously is deeply dangerous. It erodes our sense of existence. We become ghosts in our own lives, moving through actions by inertia, yet unable to feel the weight of meaning. To escape this state of quiet erosion, Carl Jung suggested that human beings must reclaim something stripped away by industrial civilization: ritual. In Jungian psychology, ritual does not have to be religious or wrapped in elaborate ceremony. A ritual is a symbolic act, performed with intention and reverence, designed to create a sacred space in the midst of ordinary life. It is the anchor that keeps the boat of the psyche from being swept away by the rushing current of busyness. To see this more clearly, consider the difference between eating lunch and performing a ritual. When you gulp down a mouthful of water while your eyes are glued to a screen and your mind is racing toward a deadline, that is habit, mechanical and unconscious. But when you pause, hold the glass with both hands, feel the coolness spreading into your palms, drink slowly and silently, you offer gratitude for the water nourishing your body. That is ritual. The physical action is identical. The inner stance is entirely different. Carl Jung believed that the human psyche needs safe harbors in which to dwell. He called this temenos, a term borrowed from ancient Greek, referring to the sacred ground surrounding a temple, a space protected from intrusion by the profane. In today's chaotic world, we build these temples of time through small rituals. Begin by transforming the most ordinary actions into rites of inner transition. You can begin by cleaning your living space. For many busy adults, this feels like a burden, a tedious chore to be endured and finished as quickly as possible. But try shifting your inner stance. See cleaning as a ritual of purification. As you wipe dust from the tabletop, imagine that you are also clearing away the layers of anxiety and mental clutter that have settled in your mind over the past week. As you sort through piles of books, papers, or scattered clothing, move slowly, holding the intention, I am restoring order within my own inner world. This act of creating order on the outside sends a powerful, reassuring signal to the unconscious. The chaos has ended. I am in command of my living space. At this point, the house is no longer merely four concrete walls. It becomes your personal temenos, an inviolable refuge, where the soul can rest after the storms of the outer world. Consider also the ritual of returning home after work. Instead of walking through the door carrying a tense expression and a mind crowded with deadlines, create a deliberate pause. It might be sitting in your car for 2 minutes, breathing deeply, and setting the weight of work down on the back seat. It might be changing out of your work clothes and stepping into a hot shower. Let this become a rite of shedding the social persona, a conscious return to the true self in the presence of those you love. The power of ritual lies in repetition. The human mind, especially the unconscious, finds safety in meaningful repetition. In a world of constant upheaval, where news shifts by the hour and technology changes by the day, these small rituals act as steady pillars. When you repeat an action with reverence, you are building a safe home for the mind to inhabit. No matter how fierce life storms may be, no matter if markets collapse or relationships fracture, you know that tomorrow morning, the ritual of brewing tea will still be there. Each evening, the ritual of journaling will still be there. Do not live your life as a series of reactions to circumstances. Live as a creator. By breathing soul into small acts through ritual, you reclaim sovereignty over your time. The difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one often lies not in grand events, but in how we treat the most ordinary moments. The person who bows inwardly in gratitude to the cup of tea in their hands is the one who holds the secret of enduring peace. Rule number 7, removing the mask. We often assume that our exhaustion comes from the sheer volume of work, endless reports, long meetings, or an unrelenting list of household tasks. But look more closely. There are days when you work tirelessly out of passion and feel deeply energized. And then there are days when you sit through a single 30-minute social meeting and walk out feeling as though every ounce of life force has been drained from you. That exhaustion does not come from the body or the intellect. It comes from internal conflict. It is the price we pay for wearing a mask that is too heavy for too long. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask. In Latin, persona referred to the mask worn by actors in classical theater to step into a role. In life, it is the personality we perform for the world in order to be accepted, to be loved, or to conceal our vulnerabilities. We perform the role of the tireless, exemplary employee. We perform the role of the perfect parent, endlessly patient. We perform the role of the happy, successful person on social media. This mask is necessary for social interaction, but the tragedy begins when it fuses to the skin. We forget the true face beneath it and begin to believe that we are the role itself. Maintaining an image that does not align with who we truly are consumes an enormous amount of psychic energy, libido. It is like using one hand constantly to hold the mask in place, leaving only one hand to deal with the entire world. This is why so many people who appear successful by society's standards fall into depression or an existential crisis in midlife. To move beyond this, Carl Jung proposed what he considered the ultimate purpose of human life: individuation. This is a spiritual journey toward becoming the original self that the universe uniquely designed for you. Imagine that each human being is like a seed. An oak seed is meant to become an oak tree. A lotus seed is meant to become a lotus flower. The greatest tragedy is not that an oak is less impressive than some ancient tree, but that an oak seed twists itself into becoming a rose because society praises the beauty of roses. And therefore, peak productivity does not arise from forcing oneself forward. It arises from flow. This flow appears only when your actions are aligned with your nature. When a fish swims in water, it does not need to try to swim. It is simply being a fish. But if you force it to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life in struggle and exhaustion. So how do we remove this heavy mask and activate a state of flow? We cannot discard all social responsibilities overnight, but we can begin to change at the root through a method called identity stacking, the practice of consciously building one's identity. Most people, when they want to change their lives, begin with the wrong question. What should I do? Behavior. They try to wake up earlier, work harder, become more disciplined. But if these behaviors do not arise from a compatible identity, they will eventually collapse under inner resistance. Those who truly take ownership of their destiny reverse the process. They begin with a different question. Who am I? Identity. Before facing a difficult decision, a demanding project, or an emotional storm, pause and ask yourself, how would the most authentic, strongest, and wisest part of me act right now? At first, this question is not easy to answer. For many people, when they turn inward for the first time after years of living outwardly, what they encounter is either a frightening silence or a chaotic mix of conflicting inner voices. In such moments, we can draw upon a powerful psychological technique that Jung called archetype activation. According to Jung, in the deepest layer of the psyche, what he named the collective unconscious, each of us carries the full set of seeds of great human qualities: the calm clarity of the sage, the courage of the warrior, the creative force of the builder. These qualities are not distant or foreign. They are asleep within you, waiting to be named. When you feel drawn to a role model or admire a great figure, what is actually happening is resonance. The greatness within you is vibrating in recognition of the same pattern embodied outside. So use that image to awaken the great part of yourself that has been dormant. For example, when you feel like giving up on a difficult project, instead of wrestling with laziness, awaken the archetype of the professional creator that already exists within you. Would that figure lie down and scroll on their phone? No, that figure would sit down, Take a deep breath and write the first line, regardless of how they feel. When you act under the guidance of this inner model, you begin to restore your own wholeness. You allow suppressed potentials to step into the light. Gradually, these small moments of awakening connect and solidify into a new, stable identity. You no longer have to force yourself to be disciplined. You act with discipline because the warrior within you has genuinely come alive. The miracle of living in alignment with your true identity, authenticity, is that it is effortless. It requires no strain, because at last, you are simply being yourself, fully and without fracture. And that is the moment when you are not merely working efficiently, you are truly living. Together, we have traveled a long path, from learning how to protect the stillness of the morning, to finding the courage to remove the mask and live from our true identity. We did not stop at surface-level tips. We went all the way down to the deepest layers of the psyche to restructure a life from within. Hold this firmly in your heart. The win we are aiming for is not measured by busyness or by the numbers in a bank account. Though those may arrive naturally as a byproduct when you are in flow, true victory is the deep sense of peace you feel when you lay your head on the pillow each night. It is the greatest victory of a human life, when you no longer have to run away from yourself. The world does not need more exhausted work machines. The world is yearning for whole human beings. Do not treat these 7 principles as a new burden or pressure. Simply choose one that resonates most deeply with your heart today and practice it as an act of profound self-love. If this video has planted a seed of awakening within you, leave a comment below. I decide to focus on me. Let it be your first declaration to the universe. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we don't lose each other on this ongoing journey of healing and returning to wholeness. Thank you for listening.